Then Israel said to give us a land swap of equal quality land, 1.9% in Israel. Actually, the map was quite realistic. It enabled for a real Palestinian state to emerge, because the whole of the West Bank is clean apart from the border areas. And it enabled Israel to keep well over half of its settlers in place. That seemed to me a reasonable resolution. It still leaves, it's true, 200,000 settlers in place. That's true. But even there, it's not as big an obstacle as is normally thought, because according to some polls, not all, most Israelis moved to the West Bank because of what's called quality of life considerations. They were given subsidized mortgages, and they were given all sorts of economic incentives to move there. And about 80% or so of Israelis, they said, settlers, they said to Israel, if you compensate us financially, we'll go back. Just give us adequate compensation, and we will return. And that then leaves, several thousand of these, if we can use the word, fanatical settlers, ideologically driven. Some of you might know them from places like Hebron, Al-Khalil, the 400 or so slightly crazed Jewish settlers, most of them, unfortunately, from my neighborhood in Brooklyn, who occupy the old city of Hebron. And it's true they present some kind of problem, but they don't present an insuperable problem. In fact, it's fairly easy to resolve, because some of you might know, how many of you know Hebron as a city? Raise your hand. Oh, that's quite a lot. Well, Hebron is a conservative Palestinian city, very traditional, the most traditional of Palestinian cities. I rather like it the most. I find Ramallah a kind of seedy Times Square. It's not my cup of tea. But the Hebron is quite conservative, Islamic, and it's, the Hebronites are known to be very stubborn. Everybody knows the joke about, did you hear about the Hebronite who fell off a 6-story building and he lived? Really? How? He landed on his head. They're very, very thick-skulled and very, very stubborn, the Hebronites. So, all Israel has to do, once it makes the decision to leave, all the army has to do is go to the 400 settlers and say, listen, guys, you want to stay, stay, but we're leaving. If you want to stay among those 160,000 crazy Islamic fundamentalist Hebronites, that's your choice, but we're leaving. As one former head of the Israeli Shin Bet, the internal security organization, as he said, and I'm quoting him, he said, I don't believe these settlers are all that brave. When we leave them out there alone, they'll come, and how they'll come and how fast. And that, I think, is the truth. If you look at the negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the Israeli leadership, it never claimed that the settlements were physically a problem. What they kept saying is, it's a political problem that no Israeli prime minister can hope to survive if he calls for the uprooting of the settlements. And then that's our job. Our job is to make it clear that the price for keeping the settlements is higher than the price for removing them. And then I think, in accordance, of course, with international law. And I think that problem can be overcome. And that's basically where I'm going to leave you this evening, except to say But I've been involved in this conflict now for some 30 years. I first became involved in June 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon. It was a quite horrendous invasion. In the course of the 3.5 months, Israel killed between 15 and 20,000 Lebanese and Palestinians, overwhelmingly civilians. And I became involved in it. And it's a very sobering thought that my entire adult life passed 3 decades, and I invested it in trying to make sense of and also contribute towards resolving this conflict that just is so irrational, and the whole of which you take all the Israelis, all the Palestinians, you lump them together, the total population can probably fit on 2 high-rises in any block of Beijing. And their buildings are very tall there. And so, sometimes I wonder, I spent years and years and years going through these human rights reports, trying to, get the truth from the mass of lies. And I often entertain, and I'll call it admittedly, a conceit, that if I didn't do it, I always said nobody else will, because it's so tedious, and it's so boring, and it's so voluminous, the amount of lies that you have to constantly combat, and actually the amount of truth that is published, but which nobody bothers to read. It just collects dust. And for a long time, I really despaired, or I should say, over a long time, I sometimes despaired, was it worth it? Was this an investment, a good investment of a life? But now I think we're at a juncture where it's actually possible, maybe, to see light at the end of the tunnel, to resolve the conflict, and to achieve a resolution of the conflict. It really requires 2 things, very simple things. Number 1, it requires of us to be principled. And principled is not an abstract term. It's something very concrete. It means to uphold and enforce the rights of Palestinians, their rights under international law. Nobody has the right to tell Palestinians that they should have to forfeit any of their rights in the interest of achieving a resolution of the conflict. Those are their rights. They have been validated by every representative and respected legal and human rights organization in the world. If you don't want to support their rights, in my opinion, if I can use a crude expression, you ought to shut up. But you have no business. Business telling Palestinians that in the interests of peace they should forfeit this right or that right. So we have to be principled, but we also have to be reasonable. And reasonable means showing everyone there is a way out. There is a way to preserve everybody's dignity, everybody's human rights, every person's right to a decent life. There's a room for everyone. Just be fair. Be reasonable. If you're fair and if you're reasonable, well, as the late Edward Said, Palestinian American, he liked to quote the Caribbean poet M.A. Cesar, and he liked to quote the line, "There's room for everyone at the rendezvous of victory." There's room for everyone at the rendezvous of victory. And I'll tell you, I like that line, because normally when we think of victory, we think of victor and vanquished, winner and loser. But the line says there's room for everyone, Israeli and Jew, and Christian for that matter. There's room for everyone. Just be fair. There's room for everyone at that rendezvous of victory. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm determined personally, call it another conceit, but I am determined personally to get there. I don't know how I'm going to get there, because time has passed. My legs are getting out of me. It's getting very tough to jog. It is. It's very dispiriting. I jog outside a nursing home, and let's just say somebody's having trouble keeping up, and I'll leave it at that. And I don't think I'll be jogging there. Hopefully I might be walking there. I might need a cane. I might need a wheelchair. It might be on a stretcher. But I am determined to get to that rendezvous of victory. But there's one hitch, and it's not just rhetorical, it's factual. I can't get there alone. Either we all get there together, or it isn't going to happen. So I hope to see all of you, because there's room for everyone. If you're fair, if you're reasonable, I hope to see all of you at that rendezvous of victory. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Finkelstein for that lecture. Also, I would like everybody's help just to maintain the calm and order in this room. We would like it to be questions and then answers, comments by Dr. Finkelstein. So please no back talk unless the professor wishes. But please no back talk, no conversations between the person asking the question and the professor. So if everybody can help me, if somebody's stepping out of the line, speaking again, if you can please just say shh. That person will understand. For most of the people in the room, we have an agreement that we want to maintain order in this room. So just for order's sake, we'd like to follow that format. Thank you.
I promised this gentleman first, this gentleman second, and I would like to take at least 3 dissenting opinions first, because I think it's fair.